The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark. I'm from Sunrise Systems. I'm going to be today's presenter for today's webinar. I think I got some questions here that people weren't hearing me. I apologize for that. I think my mic went into mute mode and I did not realize it. So I see people now responding that they can hear me correctly. So sorry about that. So let me kind of start again from the beginning. If I got cut off halfway there, I'm not sure if it was from the beginning that you couldn't hear me or halfway through. So today's webinar, I'm expecting some more people. Right now we have about 60 people out of the 90 some odd people that have registered so far, so I'm going to give them a few more minutes to attach today's webinar. But a couple of things is I cannot hear you directly. Everybody is in mute mode. So if you have any questions as we go along, and some people have already have found that, is there is a questions pane on the right-hand side. Please type your questions into that questions pane, and I will answer those questions periodically as we go through today's webinar. I will stop at certain points and I'll take a look at the questions and I will answer those questions. There's also a section on the right-hand side in the webinar pane called handouts. There's 3 handouts that I provided there. One is a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that was running while you were waiting for me to start the webinar. The other is an agenda for today's training. That agenda is pretty much what I also had in the PowerPoint that was running as well too, but you can download that to make some notes as we go through today's training. And the other document is basically gives you information about the system requirements, the URL, the web address for the Artemis system, and some troubleshooting items as well too. So again, I suggest that you download those attachments. You could do them now, or you could do them before the end of the webinar, so you have them. At the end of the webinar, I will be providing my email address. So if anybody has any questions after the fact that they forgot to answer, that I couldn't answer at that point in time, feel free to email me, or if there's some other documents or whatever you need, feel free, like I said again, to email me at the address I provide at the end of the webinar. So just give me a few seconds here. I just want to clear a couple things on my screen. And let's just make sure everybody can see my screen here. let's do this. Okay. And I'm going to close this webinar here, this PowerPoint I have right now. Just give me 1 second to close that. There we go. Okay. So a couple things as we start today. If everybody could see here, I'm going to show you some Artemis facts real quick. So just so everybody's aware, Artemis was first launched back in 2009 for New Jersey counties and municipal agencies. Artemis was actually funded originally by a grant called the Paris Grant. Not sure if everybody's familiar with that. And the ultimate goal was that the first year, the New Jersey counties and municipal agencies would be rolled out into Artemis, and then shortly thereafter, the second year or so, the school boards and also state agencies would eventually be rolled into Artemis as well too. Unfortunately, the Paris Grant went away and the funding went away, and at the time, the state didn't have any additional funds to support the expansion of the system. Lo and behold, we're here today. Obviously, funds eventually were made available, and that's why we're doing today's training session to get you guys up and running within the Artemis system. Just to give you some other quick facts, currently we have 3 state agencies that have registered. As I said, this year we are rolling out the Board of Eds and the state agencies. We do have a total of 540 county agencies or departments that have registered in Artemis, and over 5,000 municipal departments throughout the state. We've already had 1 Board of Ed register. That's one of our test departments that we've been testing with for the last several months. We have over 4,300 registered users within the Artemis system, so quite a few users, and since 2009, over 28,000 electronic disposition requests have been submitted to the state for, destruction of records. So I just wanted to give you some quick facts on that as well too. Let me bring up the training agenda real quick to kind of go over what we're going to talk about today with training here. Let me just change this view. Okay, so for today's agenda, basically what we're going to do is we're going to review the Artemis system requirements and setup. We're going to talk about how to register as a records manager for your organization. We're going to talk about how to retrieve a lost or forgotten password. Once we log into the system, I'm going to talk about or show you the layout of the home screen when you first log into the system and how to navigate that system. We'll talk about how do you create and update agencies or retention schedules within the system, how to create additional users and the different role types that your users can have within the Artemis system as well too. When it comes to records, we'll show you how to search and review the New Jersey RMS retention schedules, record series numbers, and retention policies for your records. We'll determine which records are due for destruction based on those guidelines. And then obviously we'll get in to show you how do you create a disposition request, and then what are the steps that you need to do after that disposition request is created, meaning how do I print out that request, how do I obtain my signatures, my authorization signatures, how do I scan and upload that disposition form back into the Artemis system, and then how do I submit that form electronically to the state. Once that form is sent to the state, then we'll talk about, once you get a response back from them, hopefully your form or your request has been accepted, and then what are the next steps after that request has been accepted. So again, these will be the different, these will be the agenda items that we're going to try to cover over the next hour and a half. I try to keep it to an hour and a half. I will let you know that we have gone over a little bit the last couple of webinars just based on the questions that we got, but I'll try to keep it as close to finishing around 3:30, as close to as possible to that time. So let's talk about system requirements real quick. So system requirements, which is the next thing here, let me make this a little bit bigger here. For computer system, obviously you need a computer that runs either Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8, or 8.1. I actually haven't updated this document, but Windows 10 was launched last week. The system should work with Windows 10 as well too, but this is a web-based system, so you need to use a browser in order to access the system. At this time, we do not support other browsers except for Internet Explorer. Okay, so Mozilla Firefox, Google Chrome, Apple Safari, they're not supported at this time. You have to use Internet Explorer version 9 and above. Okay, now if anybody happens to get Windows 10 immediately, like I said, it was just launched last week or installed immediately on their computer. There is a new browser in there called Edge. The system will not work with Edge, but still embedded in Windows 10 is Internet Explorer 11. So again, you can utilize Internet Explorer 11 within Windows 10 for right now. You will need some type of PDF reader. Adobe Acrobat Reader obviously is the most common reader out there. But if you have some other PDF reader, that's fine. That'll work as long as you can be able to open up PDFs within your system. You will also need what we call a Twain compatible scanner. Now, this is for you to scan the signed disposition form and then upload it into the Artemis system. If you have a scanner directly attached to your computer, that's fine. Most of those scanners do scan are Twain compatible scanners, but I know most people, most organizations have copiers that also act as scanners as well too. Those are all Twain compatible as well too. And there will be certain guidelines that you need to follow when you're scanning that document. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes when we get down below on this document here. Below that is the link to the online production or live system for Artemis. Today, I'm going to be working in a test system, so don't be alarmed if I happen to pick your organization for testing purposes today. It's not saying that I've registered you or set you up in the system. I am working in our test system, but again, this is the link to the actual live system. I'm also providing a link here for training videos. This actually is going to be the link to get to the training videos for Artemis, also plus the webinars that I've been conducting over the last several weeks, plus today's webinar. They are being recorded. They will be posted on YouTube, okay? So you can find those training videos and any of the webinars that I've had so far up on YouTube. And then, like I said, today's webinar will be posted up there as well too, probably over the next couple of days. When you go to scan in your disposition form and you need to upload it into the Artemis system, you have to file some file format specifications in order to do that. Now, I know most copiers today scan as by default in PDF mode, but the state standard, again, this isn't a Sunrise requirement, this is a state requirement, that the format of that document has to be in what they call TIFF format. Now, all those copier scanners have the option to scan in TIFF. You just have to change that setting on your control panel on the copier, scan it as a TIFF image, and you'll be fine to upload it into the system. For color mode, we recommend that you scan as a black and white document, not color or not grayscale. It has to be black and white. And the resolution should be at least 300 dpi. You could go up to 600 dpi, but at a minimum, we say 300 dpi. So you should follow these file format specifications when you go to scan into the system. And then I've also added a section down at the bottom of this form called troubleshooting steps. Because everybody's networking environment is different, okay, and we can't control how your IT folks have, configured your environment for security and so on and so forth. There are some times that you'll go into the Artemis systems and screens won't appear exactly how they should, especially how you see them in today's webinar. So what I've done is these are 3 quick items that you can try if your screens aren't coming up correctly. One of them might work or solve the problem, or you might need to use all 3 of them, okay? It's all based on how your networking environment's set up. What I would do is, again, download this document from the section on the right-hand side where it says, what do we have here? This handout section, and then just give it to your IT folks. They'll know exactly how to set these settings on your browser. But again, I just wanted to provide those troubleshooting tips. That being said, if you do have any trouble beyond these troubleshooting tips with the system, your first point of contact will be the state or RMS. On the Artemis home screen or the login page, there is a hotline number. I'll point that out to you when we get to that login page. You call them first. They will try to troubleshoot the issue that you're having. If they cannot figure it out, then they'll push that call over to Sunrise, and then we will be in touch with you to figure out what kind of problems you are having. So again, just want to let you know that your first point of contact will be the state. And again, if they can't resolve the problem, then they'll push that over to Sunrise to handle from there. So again, just want to do that. And again, all these handouts are available on the right-hand side of the screen. So that being said here, let me close a couple of these screens here real quick so we can get back to the home page here. Let me close this PowerPoint. Okay. So right now I'm on the login page for Artemis, and as I mentioned, right here in the middle, down at the bottom, it says Artemis Hotline. It's a 609 number, so 609-530-7486. Again, that's the number that you would contact in case you have any questions about the system or any problems with the system. That's your first point of contact. So that being said, I'm going to pause for one quick second here because I have a few questions here I just want to address. Peggy asked, can you say which Board of Education is currently using the system? Right now, I think Alpine up in Bergen County has been one of the first users that have registered for the system. They were one of our beta test departments. So again, I'm not sure if they've submitted any request yet to the state, but they were one of the first ones that were part of the beta trial program. That we started this several months ago. So again, that's who it is. I have a question from Paul. It says, will this webinar be archived? If so, might I receive it via email? Yes, Paul, as I mentioned, this webinar will be posted up on YouTube. Once I have that posted on YouTube and I have the link, I will email that link to everybody. So either yourself or any of your team members can review this webinar over again. And like I said, on that YouTube website, there are training videos that go over each section that I'm going to cover today as well too. So again, anybody can always go back and reference those training videos if they forgot, what I've talked about today. So again, those will be available for you. So those are the questions that I have for right now. So let me close this pane. And we'll move closer here for a second. Let me just give me 1 second. Okay, so as I had mentioned, I'm on the login page for Artemis here, okay? Now, the first thing that you're gonna need to do, or each organization's gonna need to do, is they're gonna need to register themselves within the system. Now, the first person to register in the system typically is going to be what we consider the records manager, could be the custodian of records. I know at the Board of Ed level, usually the business administrators are typically classified as the custodian of records. That might be the person who initially registers, or you might be a person who works for the BA and you're in charge of, maintaining or, handling the records for your particular organization. That being said, like I said, the first person that registers is going to be the admin of the system. They register as what we call a records manager within the system. And the way we do that is right here on the login page. Down below, you're going to see a link that says New Agencies Register Here. And I'm going to click on that link. And what that's going to do is that's going to open up a screen, and it's going to ask me to choose some information and then enter in some information as well too. So we'll give that a few seconds. Now, while this is coming up, I just want to let you know that we are in the process of finalizing some additional stuff within the system. We're hoping to have that done by the end of this week, so everybody could actually start registering as of next week. So just bear with us. It could be done as soon as tomorrow, but from what my developers are telling me, they should have everything finalized by the end of the week. And it pretty much revolved around some of, I like to consider the special organizations of Board of Eds, not so much the normal municipal Board of Eds. Some charter schools we had to set up differently, some of the county Board of Education type departments. So the special ones we're still working on. We had to get a couple more pieces of information from the state, but I'm being told that by the end of this week, those should all be set up. Once we do have that list set up, if there are still any problems and you cannot register, okay, in that case, what I would do is I would probably tell you to contact me directly based on the email address I give you at the end, because that could be more of a technical problem. The state would probably just say, well, I don't know, and send it over to us anyway. So for that type of call, if you can't register, you don't find your organization in the list, then I would say just contact us directly, and we'll address it from there. And if we have to get back to the state, we'll get back to them and figure out what's going on, why we didn't get your name from them. So on this screen here that came up, the first thing you're going to do is under organization type, you're going to select Board of Education from the list in the drop down, okay? And then once I pick Board of Education, to the right-hand side where it says county, that drop-down list is going to be populated, or I have to pick from that list too. So today I'm going to pick Hunterdon County, okay? And I'm going to pick one of my municipal Board of Educations from Hunterdon County. Today I'm going to pick Tewksbury Township, okay? Now once I do that, underneath where I just picked my municipality/Board of Education name, okay, it says there's a question there that says, are you the records manager for your organization? Very important question, and this is a question you're going to want to answer yes. And the reason for that is by answering yes, this registration is going to go to the state, and this is going to give you, once they approve this registration, this is going to give you full access to the system to be able to manage the system for your organization. If you try to register and this is set as a no, and they happen to still approve your registration, you're only going to be set up as a regular user, so you won't have any ability to actually add new users, add new agencies to the system or retention schedules. You basically won't be able to do anything. And what we'll have to do is have to do your registration all over again. So just please be advised that, this question here needs to be answered yes if you're the first time user in the system. And then once you are registered and accepted by the state as a user and able to log into the system at that point in time, then you could set up additional users within the system. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the user setup, who should be set up and, how you set those users up. So underneath there today, I'm going to enter some what we call primary user information. So again, some of this is self-explanatory. Any of the fields that have a red asterisk are actually required fields. So you're going to have to enter in those fields or that information within there. So here I'm going to put first name, last name. I'm going to pick a login name. Now, anything below a field that's in parentheses, usually in blue, is kind of guidelines that you need to follow in order to do that. So now for login name, it tells me my login name needs to be between 6 and 15 characters in length. Okay. Now, most people tend to use first initial last name, which is fine. You can give that a try. The problem is that remember, this system has been in place since 2009, and what happens is if you have a common name, let's say like John Smith, and your name happens to be Janice Smith, and you try to use J Smith, chances are J Smith is already used. It's like if you were registering for, let's say, an email address for Yahoo or Gmail, and it's already been taken, you're going to have to pick something else. Same case here. It's going to ask you to, again, pick something else. But if it does, just, try to pick another username. But typically, most people use first initial, last name, which I'll do here. I'll put in my initials at the very end on the next section. And then for password, again, password should be at least 6 characters in length. We recommend that it's a combination of letters, numbers, and special characters. So let me type in my password here. Okay, and then it's going to ask you to type it again just to confirm it. Okay. The system also utilizes a PIN number later on in the system, so we ask that you pick a PIN number. Typically, a 4 to 6 digit numeric number will suffice. Okay, so I'm just going to pick a quick PIN number here, and then I'm going to put my phone number in as well too. That's a required field, along with my email address. And here, I'm going to actually use my own email address. Now, below that, what's going to happen is that's the primary user information. Now, typically, all the information that's entered on this screen is typically going to be the same information. In some counties and municipalities, that information might change from section to section. But I think here with the Board of Eds, everything here will be the same. So to help you or to facilitate you, making it easier to add fields or information you've already entered, if you click on the checkbox here that says copy primary user information, it's going to say that this is going to copy the fields from above and place them down below for any fields that match. So I'll hit OK, and you'll see down below the fields that match up above will be populated. But there are a couple of fields here that don't have information above, so I'm going to have to, again, type that information in. So here I'm going to say I'm the records manager. Address, I'll just use our address here. Okay, and again, I filled out the other required fields that I had to. And then the last section where it says records manager information below, I could do the same thing. I can click on the checkbox. I can have it populate what you see there, and then we move down below. Now, the state has not determined any terms or conditions, so you really don't have to worry about that, but you do have to still accept whatever terms and conditions we have listed in the box. Like I said, there is really none, but you still have to click on the checkbox that says I accept, and then here what you would do is you would type in your full legal name. Okay, and then once you do that, you've entered your name. The date automatically populates for you on the right-hand side. Then you can click on the button that says Request Registration. Okay, and what happened here? Very good. Okay, so I have an error, which is good. See, at the top of the screen here, it told me password and confirm password must equal. So when I was typing my password, I must have not have typed it correctly. So good. I'll retype it again. Now let's try request and registration. So if anything is missing, if you forgot to enter a field in or something wasn't typed correctly, obviously you could see in red, a red message appeared at the top to let me know what the problem was. Typically, when you have a successful operation within the system, you usually get a message in green at the top of the screen, or you get a screen like we see here that acknowledges that information as well too. So what we saw here right now is it says agency registration request acknowledged. What this just did now is I now sent my registration request to the state. I still cannot log into the Artemis system until they approve that request, okay? So please be aware, if I try to go log in with that username and that password I just put on the previous screen, the system's gonna tell me that it's not valid, okay? You won't be able to log into the Artemis system until the state approves your request, okay? And then once they approve your request, what will happen is you'll get an email back letting you know that your request has been approved. And if I just jump into my email real quick, I just want to show you that real quick. Bear with me here. Okay, and let's see here. Here we go. And if we take a look here, you'll see here's my email that just came in. Okay, and it tells me, you get an email confirmation as well too, say, that you've registered for the system, and you're just waiting for the state approve. So I'm actually going to approve our request real quick. I'm working on another system here to do that request. So let me quickly approve this. Once the state approves it, like I said, you will get an email back that that request has been approved. Okay, and if I close this and I go back to my email right here, oh, that was the request, sorry, wrong one. Here we go. Here's the registration acknowledgement that says that your registration has been approved, and now you're able now to log into the system. So again, as soon as they approve your request, you will get an email back letting you know that that request has been approved. So just wanted to quickly show that to you. So let me go back to the login page here. And before we start to log in, I do have a few questions that came up, so let me go and answer those questions real quick. I have a question from Robin that says, the municipality/Board of Ed for Morris County doesn't have anything in the drop-down. As I mentioned, Robin, not everything is quite set up yet. The developers are still working on the list. So until they have that list finalized, that drop down will not be, there'll be no entries in that drop down for right now. So like I said, they're telling me by the end of the week, they should have everything ready and that list populated. So, you can periodically go in and, see if it's updated. Once it's updated, you can obviously go in and you can register. And Mindy, I think, asked a similar question. It says, why is the agency grayed out? Again, because, like I said, the list isn't totally up there and ready yet. So again, if you're trying to do this in the live system, you're not going to be able to do that just yet today. Like I said, by the end of the week, you should be able to do that as long as everything goes okay and we get all the information we need to from the state. Okay, so those are the questions I have for right now. Oh wait, I had one quick other question came in from Peggy. It says, is it mandatory to use legal name for signature? For instance, my legal name isn't used at my job or used in my work email. Peggy, I guess just use the name that you traditionally use. When I say legal name, I mean, this isn't, technically a legal document per se. I just usually say that because obviously, if you're go by the name Mike Smith. Michael's more appropriate if that's your legal name, but again, it's up to you. If you go by a certain name, then obviously just, kind of use the name that everybody knows you by, and that's what you use under everything, whether it's email or, you normally sign stuff. So, that's fine as well too. I don't think anybody's not going to approve your request because they checked your legal name and it wasn't exactly what it should be. So, that's fine as well too. Okay, so I'm back to the login page. So before I actually log in with the username and password that I just selected, I just want to point out one thing. Now, I know most organizations, when they typically work with disposition requests, they only do this once a year, okay? And then they kind of forget about, doing their records until the following year. A lot of times, what I do recommend is that once you register and you put, you pick your username and your password, you do write that down and keep that in a safe place so you can go back and reference it at some point in time. But if you do forget your password, there is a way to come in here. There's a forgot password link right on the login page. And if you click on that, what it'll do is it'll ask you for the login name that you registered with, and then it's going to ask you for your email address that you utilized when you registered. And I'm going to put that information in. I'm going to click Get Password. And again, these two fields have to match, and I did this on purpose. It says email address provided is not valid. The reason is as I use .net instead of .com just to show you. So if somebody puts information in here and puts somebody's other email address, don't be alarmed that that password is going to be emailed to somebody else. It's only going to be emailed to the email address that we have on file with this username within the system. So as long as that's your email address and your username, that's where the password will be emailed to. So again, here I'll do Get Password, and then what will happen is an email will be sent, to that email address provided. And again, this has to match. These two have to match in order to get that email sent to you. Let me go back to the login page. Just wanted to show you that real quickly in case somebody forgot their password. There's my email that just came in, with my password. Okay, just wanted to show you how quick that was. So let me close these two. Go back to the login page and let me log in now. Okay, so once I'm logged in here, we're going to land on what we like to refer to as the Artemis homepage. And I want to kind of go over this layout with you real quick just so you understand all the different elements on this page. In the very top upper right-hand corner, you have several links here. It says Help, My Profile, Contact Us, Home, My Profile, Contact Us, Help, and FAQs. As I mentioned, this is the home screen. If you find out or you find yourself somewhere in the system, you don't know how you got there, if you click on this home button, it will take you back out to this first page. Okay, so a quick way to get back out to the home page. The My Profile link enables you and your users to go in and update certain information for their profile. Okay, the information in the top section of the user profile cannot be changed, but the bottom information can be changed by the user, and it's only their own information. So if a user logs in and wants to change their password or their PIN number, they can come in here, go to the My Profile link, and they can update their password or their PIN number, especially if they have to change it and they want to keep them in sync with other applications that they're using. It's a good way to do that. So that's how they would come in here and update their information. Under the Contact Us, as I mentioned earlier, your first point of contact is the state. Their hotline number is out on the home page. I don't think this link is actually active right now because, again, we've published their number right there on that login page. There is a help link here. Now, this help link will open up our online help manual. Okay, I'm not going to open it now because it's I think it's about 75 pages, whatever. It's a PDF manual. But if you want to read about any additional information on the system or functions of the system, there is an index in the front. Open that up. Look in the index, find the page number that, the information you're looking for is on, and then just navigate to that page. So again, that's how you can get to our online help manual if need be. And then FAQs revolve around system requirements. I talked about that in the beginning of our webinar, what the system requirements are for the system. But again, if you want to take a look at that and look at the documents that we have there, that's fine as well too. Below that, it's going to tell you the type of organization you are. Here in this case, we're called the Board of it's a Board of Education type organization. Below that will be your organization name, and then your username would be listed next to that, along with the, well, this is the main retention schedule for Board of Eds. This is the M700,000 record series. To the right of that is a logout button. A couple different ways to log out of the system. I can either click on the logout button to log me out. It will take me back to the login screen. Since this is a web-based system, I can always click on the red X in the upper right-hand corner, and I could X out of the window. That will log me out. And then the last way that you can be logged out of the system is that if you're logged into the system and you haven't had any activity in the system for a period of time, for security reasons, the system's going to log you out automatically. At that point in time, you'll just have to log back in. But I do caution you, if you're doing certain steps in the system that require you to add new items and save, and you haven't saved, anything that you haven't saved will be lost if the system automatically logs you out. So one of the things I will talk about when we get to disposition processing is as you're adding new items, just make sure you save after each item you enter into the system so you don't lose anything that you've done so far. Moving over to the left side under the big Artemis logo, this is our menu bar. Several different menu items here, disposition management, retention schedule, system management, reports. And as you can see, as I put my cursor on those items, there's different sub-items below each one. But to make it easier for everybody, we've also pulled these items down into these boxes here, right? So under disposition management, the big box here, it says create disposition and search disposition requests. It's the same two items that are above on the menu bar. So we brought them out onto the dashboard or onto the home screen to make them a little bit easier. The only box that we didn't bring out onto the home screen was the report section, and that's because, as reports grow, we don't know how many reports are going to be there, and it would be very hard to display all reports that are available in the system out on this home screen. So we just made it easier with the first three items. Below that box, you're going to see a box that says inbox. And the items that are in that inbox, except for the last item, which I'll explain in a second, are basically task items that you do when you're working within the system. Right now, all those items have a 0 in parentheses because we haven't physically done anything yet in the system. You're going to see zeros in all those items. But as we start to work in the system, some of those items are going to go up. You might see a 1, a 2, a 3, 4, and so on and so forth. Okay, so as we go through, we'll see that. And then the last item at the bottom is how many published retention schedules there are within the system. Just so everybody's aware, the state actually uses Artemis to publish or basically create, author, and publish all retention schedules for the state. That includes municipal government, county government, Board of Education, and all state agencies as well too. So that's all done through the Artemis system, and it's all configured and authored within the Artemis system. That's why right now you see 1100 there. That's how many different retention schedules the state actually, or RMS actually manages and has the responsibility for. So again, that's the layout of the home screen. Just wanted to point that out. So I'm going to pause 1 second to see if there's any questions. Nope. Okay, good. So we're doing good. I haven't no questions at this point in time. So let's go now. Let's talk about system management. Okay, now as the records manager, since you registered as a records manager, as I mentioned earlier, you basically have full control of the system, and you'll have this system management section here. A regular user who gets set up in the system will not see this. Okay, only records managers see this information. So what can you do as a system manager? Okay, well, the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to register what we call new agencies or retention schedules. And you'll click on this link here to do that. And basically what this is you have to understand that when this system was originally designed, it was designed for both all types of government agencies, municipal, county, state, and Board of Eds. Now, at a municipal agency or organization, for example, you have multiple departments, right? You have the municipal clerk, you might have building and construction, you might have planning and zoning. Each one is its own department or agency, and each one has their own specific retention schedule. But what I found working with Board of Eds is the Board of Eds actually have 6 different retention schedules that they can utilize. But what I've been told from the few Board of Eds that I spoke to is that typically Board of Eds aren't broken out necessarily in these departments where certain users only, deal with certain retention schedules. It's usually one main person or 2 main people that handle all the records and they deal with all these schedules. But one of the things that has to be done is that each retention schedule has to be registered in the system, okay? So what I say to do is the very first time that you log into Artemis, the very first thing you should do is go in and register these retention schedules. It's a one-time process. You do it one time, you won't have to worry about it ever again, okay? So it'll take you about 5 or 10 minutes to do it. It's a quick, easy process. We'll do 2 right now just so I can show you. So what I'll do here is I'll pick the first retention schedule from the list, which is administration. right? And it's going to ask me to fill out the information. Now, I can put in my information, or if you're not the BA, you might want to put in your BA's information within this, since that person is technically the custodian of records. Let me just come in here, just enter my information. And the same thing, anything with a red asterisk is a required field. Okay. And then down below, if I want to enter records manager information in as well too, if it's somebody different or the same, I can fill that in, and I can just click on the checkbox to do that. But once I'm done enter all the information in, I'll click on register. Okay, I'll get a message up in top in green that tells me this administration, agency, or retention schedule has been registered successfully. And now I can go ahead and I can register my next schedule. Now you'll notice from the list, originally we had 6 schedules listed there. I only have 5 now. As you register each schedule, it will be removed from the list. So if you don't see it on the list, it means it's already been registered, right? So I can pretty much just go right down this list and do all these schedules until none are left over, right? So let me just finish doing this real quick. Do 2 schedules. I'm just going to put RM for records manager. And I'll copy down the RM information. I'll click register. And again, this schedule is now registered as well too. And if I look at my list, now we're down to 4 left. So again, that would be the very first thing that I do when you log into the system, is go in and register all your schedules and just make sure they're available to you and your users. So when they go to process a disposition request, they'll be able to do that. Let me go back out to the home screen real quick, show you a couple other things. Now, once all your agencies or retention schedules are registered, let's say you put the information that you put into each schedule happen to be your BA's information. Let's say that business administrator has now retired or has moved on from the organization, and we have a new business administrator, and you want to go in and update that information. That's fine. You can go in under search agency, okay? You can click just on the search button. It will pull up all the agencies that have been registered within the system. And at this point in time, you can actually click on the details button on the right, and you can go in and you can update that information if need be. Okay. You also have another section that's available in here too as well too. As you're creating a disposition request, we do ask to put in custodian's name information. You can help eliminate some of the type in. There's a drop down list that you can pick predefined records custodian information. So let's say I'm the records manager, but John Smith happens to be the BA, right? And he's a custodian. I'm just going to fill in his information here. Okay. Okay. And what I will do is I will hit save. And what will happen is now my BA's information will be saved. And I can add a couple of custodians as well too. There are, again, a county organization, sometimes there are multiple custodians. So you can enter as many as you want. And then the last section at the bottom, this information, you cannot enter anything in these fields. These are fields that are maintained by the state. And this really applies for organizations that have imaging certification from the state for document imaging. As you're aware, with document imaging, you get certified by the state. They issue a certification number and the date that it was issued and the renewal date. They will populate this information so you know when your renewal and everything is coming up for for your renewal or whatever. So that certification information will be populated by the state at some point in time. You can't enter anything in there, but it's more for your reference. So let me go back to search results. So that's right there. That's the, or actually, let's go out to the home screen. That's the agency setup and how to search your agencies that are set up. The last 2 things in system management are adding new users and searching users. So let's talk about adding new users. Now, since you first got into the system, you registered as a records manager and got into the system, okay? What I would recommend is that you have at least one other records manager set up for your organization as a backup. So in case you're on vacation, you're out sick, somebody else has to manage the system, you should have at least a second records manager set up for your organization. You could have more, you could have 3 or 4. I wouldn't go crazy and set up everybody as a records manager because, like I said, being a records manager gives you some additional things you could do within the system. Typically, like I said, You might have at the Board of Ed level, you might have the actual records manager set up, the BA set up. You might even have an IT person set up as a records manager, okay? So again, I'm not going to go through all these fields and enter a records manager here, but again, I just wanted to let you know that you should have at least one other records manager set up. The other role you have here is what we call a multi-agency records disposal user, and these are your regular users, okay? You'll set your regular users up, and this will allow them to create disposition requests for any retention schedule or agency that you set up in the system in the prior step, okay? So again, whoever's managing your records, whether it's yourself or you have other users that process disposition requests, you would set them up with their own username and password within the system, so they can actually process the disposition request as well under their username and password. Again, I'm not going to go through it and set up another user, but that's how obviously there's only a couple of fields there. Just fill them out, follow the guidelines for some of the fields when it comes to login name, password, and PIN number. Click on save, and then that information will be saved in the system. And then the same thing is true too when you want to go to search for your users. Once you have users set up in the system, you can click on search users. You can click on the search button. Right now we only have one user, myself, that's been set up. But if you have other users set up in the system, basically what you would do is you would see them in the list. And let's say we have a user who's no longer with the organization. Well, what you would do in that case is we would disable them, right? So they don't have access to the system anymore. And basically what you would do is go into the details button on the right-hand side. It would pull up their information, okay? And then we have a checkbox here. I'm not going to do it, obviously, I'm the only records manager here, but you would click on this checkbox that says disable user, okay? And then hit save or update. And then basically at that point in time, that user is no longer has access to the system. So again, if you have to disable a user, that's how you would go in and disable that user. So I'm going to pause there for 1 second. I'm going to see if we have any questions before we actually get into now doing stuff within the system outside of the system management stuff. So give me 1 second. Okay, so I don't have any questions right now. So let's continue on. So the first thing I want to show you, and the first thing really when it comes to records management is, you need to know what the retention policy are for the records that you're managing, okay? Now, as I mentioned earlier, the state uses the Artemis system to create, author, publish all retention schedules within the state, including the Board of Ed schedules. This information here is going to be the most up-to-date information that you will have available to you. I know most people in the past, what they've done is they've gone out to the state website and they've, opened or downloaded the retention schedules from that state website, and that's what they utilize. They bring them back, they either save them on their computer or they physically print them out. But the problem with that is that, how often do you do that? How often do you go back out to the state site and pull down those retention schedules? I've been at some organizations where I've seen people using retention schedules, believe it or not, that are over 15 years old. And the problem with that is that, things are changing constantly. Record series are changing constantly. Retention policies are changing constantly. And even out on the state site, that information is a little dated because once the state publishes a new schedule, they send it over to OIT to update that website. Well, I guarantee that website doesn't get updated immediately, right? There's probably a period of time before that website gets updated immediately. But those changes are already in Artemis. So really, the thing that I'm stressing here is that to get the most up-to-date information for retention policies, Artemis is the place to go. And the way we would do that is under retention schedules, or here in the box where it says search retention schedules, we'll click on that checkbox or that link. And what it does is it brings me into the search screen. And we have a bunch of search parameters up here that we can utilize. But the two main fields that we utilize the most when we're searching for retention schedules and record series are the record series title and the description fields on the right-hand side, right? So let me type in a keyword here and hit search. And I'm typing in the word students. And I forgot to do one thing. Well, this is actually a good thing. I typed in students, but what happens is now I got students, anything that had students in the record series title from all retention schedules. That means all state schedules, county, municipality, and Board of Eds. What I forgot to do first is I should have selected organization type Board of Education because I only want to limit my search to the Board of Eds, right? So I'll hit search one more time. There we go. So now what the system did was the system searched all record series titles that had the word students in them for just the Board of Education schedules, right? And as you can see on the left-hand side, it actually brought back 3 results, and 1 from each of the following schedules. 1 from the administration schedule, 1 from the curriculum and instruction schedule, and 1 from the student schedule. And if we look over on the right-hand side in the record series title column, okay, we will see that word students somewhere in that record series title in each one of those record series that came up, okay? But one of the things I did was when I typed in my keyword students, I did that as a plural with the S at the end for a reason. Because if I just remove the S and just have the word student and I hit search, now instead of 3 results, I now jump to 45 results. So what I'm trying to point out here is that when you're typing your keywords in, be careful when you pluralize, you use apostrophes, you use phrase words, okay? Because the more you put in, a lot of times the less you're going to get back. The less you put in, the more you're going to get back, right? So I just wanted to show you that, just by removing the S out of students, I now increase my search results by 42 items in my search. The other thing is phrases, right? If I typed in, for example, student record, okay, as a phrase, we need to make an exact match for student record, and I have 10 results that come up for student record. If we look at the record series title field column again, we'll see, the first one says adult education student record. The second one says on the second line, copy student record, right? So that phrase, student record, is in each one of these items. So again, as you're typing in your keywords, just be careful on what you do. So now once I go through and I've said, okay, I got a set of search results, and now I want to take a look and see, a particular retention policy for a record that I've identified. Let's say we've identified this 00580001 as a record I want to see the retention policy for. What I will basically do is click on the details button on the right-hand side, okay? And what this is going to do is this is going to open up our retention policy. Now, let me get my highlighter here. So the first thing you want to see here is this is the record series number, right? So 00580001. You always want to check your status and make sure your status says active. And the reason for that is because there are times that you will see a status of obsolete or retired. That means that record series is no longer being utilized. So if you try to do a disposition request and you try to use a record series number that's obsolete or retired, it's not going to let you put it in. You have to use a record series that's active, okay? So just be aware of that. The next is going to be the title. So we see the record series title, and then a description that the state has put in, right? So this is a very long description here, and we'll talk about that a little bit later when we search on description. But that's all the information that goes into that pupil file student record. Group name and supersedes are used by the state. You don't have to worry about that. But the next section is really kind of the important section for you, right? This is your retention policy section. So the first item there says permanent record, and typically this is going to be a yes or no answer. If it was a yes, and it says it was a permanent record, all these other fields below would be not applicable, right? But since this is not a permanent record, the next item says this is my retention policy. In this case, this student record needs to be kept 100 years. If there's any additional information regarding the retention policy, it would be listed in the next field. Here we don't have anything. If this record has to be maintained at the agency level for a minimum period of time, we would find information here as well too. Any additional information regarding the agency policy would be listed in the third field. Again, a lot of these are not applicable. And then our final disposition. So after this record, we've had this record now for 100 years. What can I do after that 100 years? Well, I can go ahead and I can destroy it. Most of your records, 99% of your records are going to say destroy. You will see some record series that might have some other destruction type methods like, let's say videotapes or something might say erase, or cassette tapes might say erase, but the majority of your stuff is going to say destroy. Below that, you have some special conditions where it says archival review required. Again, that will be a yes or no answer. Typically at the Board of Ed level, archival review does not come into play. That's more of a state special condition. But the two that you might see as being yes are these two right here. Alternate media recommended and audit verification required. Alternate media recommended, if this was a yes, the state is recommending that you put that record onto microfilm, okay, as a second level of backup, okay? Again, you won't see that a whole lot, but there are records that come up that, they do have that flagged as yes, letting you know that you should, as a recommendation, put that onto microfilm. And then the last question there says audit verification required, okay? And that's a yes or no. This tells you for the record series that you're utilizing, does your auditor for your organization have to sign off on that disposition request before you submit it to the state? Okay, if this is a yes, okay, then you're going to have your auditor sign off on that request. Even if one item on that request has a yes answer, you're going to have your auditor sign off on it. And I know some organizations by default send everything to the auditor. Others will only send what needs to be sent. But again, if this says a yes, that request has to go to the auditor. Down below are kind of some special conditions. Really the one that might apply to you is under citations. We don't have any here right now, but if there's any state statutes that apply to this record series or govern this record series, you would see the state statute listed down below. Now, I do know working with a lot of people, a lot of times people still love paper and handling paper. So that being said, for the people who still want to have a retention schedule in their hand, a paper retention schedule, we give you the ability to print that out, okay? And if you're on this screen here and click on the print button in the lower right-hand corner, what's going to happen is we're going to get a box. It's going to open up in PDF form, okay? We're going to get a copy of this entire retention schedule. Because we were in the student record series number, that's the schedule that populated, okay? And what we could do now is we could go ahead and we can actually print out the schedule, or since it's in electronic form, I can save it to my computer. But as I said earlier, you know, if I print this out today or I save it today, literally this schedule can be outdated tomorrow, because if tomorrow the state makes an update to one of these policies, I now have an outdated schedule. That's why, you know, I stressed earlier on, by going in and searching Artemis for your retention policies, you have the most up-to-date information. You're not going to find anything more up-to-date than that. So let me close this screen. Let me go back to my search results. I want to show you one other way to search. Okay, let me clear this. I'm going to go back and pick organization type, Board of Education. And then instead of doing my search based on record series title, I'm going to do my search based on description. All right, and I'm going to put the same keyword student. I'm going to click on search, and now you'll notice that I got 50 results that came back, right? But if we take a look at my record series title field, okay, especially if you go, you know, halfway down, like the third or fourth line or fifth line, okay, in that record series title, you don't see the word student like we did earlier when I searched by record series title, right? That's because that word student or keyword student is somewhere in the description, right? And if I put my cursor on any one of those record series titles, I have a pop-up box that comes up, and then somewhere in that description is the word student, right? I don't know exactly in this big description, I'm not going to really find it, but somewhere in that description is that keyword student. So when you're searching for a record series, okay, or a retention policy, if you can't find it by record series title, search by description, okay? Ultimately, you still might not find what you're looking for. My recommendation is, you know, try different keywords, okay? Even shorten the keywords sometimes. Think a little bit outside the box, you know, other ways that people might call that record, not necessarily the way you call it, right? Because people call records different things from, you know, organization to organization. So however you call that record, I would try different ways. But again, that's another way that you can actually, you know, search your information within the system. So again, that's how we go ahead and that's how we search the Artemis system. So let me go back out to the home screen. Let me check to see if I have any questions before I continue on here for a second. Where did my questions pane go? Bear with me here. Okay, I don't know where my questions pane went to. Okay. Hopefully it'll pop back up in a second here. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry. Here it is. Okay. So I got a question from, it looks like Martin. Can you please search how long we must retain original notes taken at a Board of Ed meeting? What keywords would we use? Okay. I'm not sure offhand what notes, you know, obviously the first thing that I would do, okay, or one of the first keywords I would use, again, not sure if it'll come up, but if I type in notes here, right? Oh, look at that. Oh, okay. So it looks like I got a hit immediately, right? So it came up and the record series title says agenda and minutes, rough notes. I'm assuming that's probably the same record. I'm going to click on the details button. And according to this, if this is what it would fall under, it's 45-day retention period. And here's where they have some additional information about the retention period, or until summary or verbatim transcripts aid what is it? abide, been approved as minutes, whatever is longer, okay? So they've added some additional retention policy there as well too. So again, Martin, I think, I hope that, answers your question. Uh, you know, but again, that's what it looks like, for your notes, okay? Be honest with you, I've never saw that before, but that was a good question and we got a good hit on that. So just wanted to show you how quick it was to actually go do that search. Think about if you had that paper retention schedule, how long it would have taken you to flip through page after page trying to find that, record series number. I do have another question that popped up here. It says, what if we represent two agencies, county and state? Office of the Executive County Superintendent of Schools, how would I register? That's one of the special organizations that we're working on right now with the state. I believe you're going to have to register twice, okay? I believe, and again, I'm not 100% sure, Jackie. That'll be something that, again, you could, email me and send me your contact information offline, and we can have a discussion about that so I can kind of bring that information back to the state. But I believe you're going to have to register twice for each organization if they're not the same. But again, I don't have an exact answer just yet for you until I actually see that final list of organizations that the state has provided us. So, like I said, once I give you my email at the end, if you want to email me your contact information, we can have a conversation offline to talk about that a little bit further. I have another quick question that came in from Christy. It says, that 45-day requirement, do we need to submit for approval of disposition of the documents? Yes. Any record that appears on that records on retention schedules, like those rough notes that we just saw, absolutely. You have to get what they, authorization before you can destroy those documents, okay? So if you have those notes that you've taken in your board meetings, those rough notes, okay, before you can dispose of them, you have to submit a request to the state and ask for approval to destroy or do whatever you do with those notes, or destroy those notes. So yes, Christy, you have to get that approval to do that. Okay, so let's move on. Those are the questions I have for now. Again, if you have more questions, just ask them. I'll answer them in the next break. So once I've searched my retention schedules and got my record series numbers and found my policy, the next thing to do is now we're going to go in, we're going to create our disposition request, right? So there's a section here under disposition management. It says create disposition request. I'm going to click on that. It's going to open my window. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pick the agency that we're creating this request for. In this case, I'm going to start with administration, okay? And then we're also going to pick the, once that populates, we're going to pick the same schedule again. We're going to use the administration schedule. Now, one thing I want to point out when I'm at this point is that in the past, when you've been dealing with the 4-part paper form, okay, if you had record series numbers that came from different schedules, a lot of times people would combine those record series numbers on the same form, okay? Unfortunately, that wasn't the correct way to do it. The state has always had a policy in place that each record series should be, or each set of record series from its own schedule should be on its own form. Unfortunately, the state hasn't enforced that policy with the paper forms, but in the Artemis system, that policy is enforced. So if I have record series that come from the administration schedule, and I also have record series numbers that come from the student schedule, those are going to go on separate disposition forms. So I'm going to have to create 2 separate disposition forms. So we're going to do that now. I'm going to start with the administration form, and then I'm going to move from there. So I picked my agency and my schedule. Okay, I'm going to move down where it says requester's name. Oh, before I get there, where it says limit record series 2. Again, this goes back to that one special condition I showed you earlier in the retention policy where it says archival review required, yes or no. Again, typically at the Board of Ed level, you won't have any records that require an archival review, so I wouldn't even worry about that. I would just leave that as is as the default. My requester's name, so it put my name here, okay? And then if I want to put my title in, I can put my title. I'll just put RM for Records Manager. And then you would fill in your custodian's name, okay? Now this, if I'm not the BA, it could be my BA or it could be somebody else. But you have to have 2 signatures from your organization before you could submit that request to the state, just like you have to today, okay? You need 2 separate signatures from your organization. Now, I can put in the BA's name there, or remember I added the BA. into my custodian information under the agency information, I could pick it from the drop-down list, right? Instead of me having to type it. So again, you could do either or. You could set them up in the agency registration, or you could just type it in. The next line has some special conditions, right? Now, this will not apply to most people, but it will apply to some people, but I still need to go over it. There are three checkboxes here. One says microfilm present, one says digital image present, and the other says damage record certificate. These are special conditions. For organizations that are requesting disposal of paper documents before their retention period, right? And the state allows you to get rid of certain records before the retention period, if they've been put onto microfilm and they have a certified microfilm certificate from the vendor, okay, you would need to check this box. So let's say, for example, I'll use that student record that we pulled up before that had a 100-year retention policy. Let's say I've put those student records onto microfilm and I want to now dispose of that paper. I can request disposal of that paper now, okay, because I put them onto microfilm, but I would have to check this box. And when I submit my disposition request, I would also have to provide a copy of that microfilm certification certificate that was provided to me from my vendor, okay? So that's one special condition. The other special condition is where it says digital image present, okay? There are organizations out there that have been certified to do document imaging and scanning. And the same rules applies as to microfilm, where if you are scanning paper documents into a certified imaging system, you can get rid of those paper documents before the retention period. Again, you have to be certified and you have to provide a copy of your certification certificate, your imaging certification certificate, and check this box to let the state know that this special condition is being applied for when you submit. And the last special condition is where it says damage record certificate. Now, if everybody remembers a few years ago when Hurricane Sandy came through, a lot of people suffered, flooding and a lot of water damage, all types of organizations, government organizations. Well, there is a separate process that you need to go through with the state to let them know that your records have been damaged, beyond, if we want to call them beyond repair, or that you can't recover the damage that was created. Once they go through that process, they will issue a damage record certificate, and at that point, now you can come in here and you can request destruction of those damaged records. That certificate that they issue doesn't automatically enable you to destroy the records. You still have to go to through the authorization process to get that request approved. But here you would say, I have a damage record certificate, and again, you would provide a copy of that damage record certificate along with your disposition form when you submit this to the state. So again, these are special conditions. They don't apply to everybody most of the time, but in case they do, you have to check those check boxes and add that additional documentation to your request. Location is more for an internal reference, where your records are currently stored. The RIM request ID is utilized by another system we have, so you don't even have to worry about that. That's from one of our records management systems. And then the comments box here is comments that you can fill in to send to the state when you submit your request, right? You could put anything in there. If your request requires some special handling for whatever reason, you could put those comments in there. For right now, I'm just going to put in, have a nice day, right, as my comment, okay? Now down below, once I fill out that top section, now I can start entering my record series numbers into the list. And there's a couple of ways I can do that. The first way I could do it, if I know the number, okay, I can come in here and I can enter in the 8 digits, right? So let me put in, I'm just going to pick a number here. I'm going to put 0001, the first 4 digits, and then the second 4 digits. And I'm going to tab over. And what's going to happen is the system's automatically going to fill in the title for me and the retention period. This case, this record series number that I utilized was for agendas and minutes copy, right? It says the retention period is 1 year, and then it's going to prompt me to enter in my from date and to dates of those records, right? So let's say these records go from 07, 2001 through 06, 2005. Right? Now, as you can see there, I span the date range, okay? I'm saying I have 4 years worth of these records, okay? As long as your records or the date range is continuous and there's no breaks in the date range, you can span the whole date range of your records. But if you had a break in your records, let's say, for example, I had these agendas and minutes from 2001 to 2003, I was missing 2004 and 2005, but I was getting approval for 2006 through 2009, then I would have to create 2 separate line items with that break in dates. But if my dates are continuous and my records have a date range that's continuous, I can span those dates just like I did there. Your medium type 99% of your records are going to have paper as your medium type. But again, if you're trying to request destruction of other type of records, you would pick the different type of medium type. One example would be electronic records, right? I know the state has I think a relatively new email policy, right? So obviously most emails are in electronic form, right? Before you can actually delete those emails, you have to request approval in order to get rid of those emails, okay? Any type of electronic record, okay? So if you have records that are in electronic form, okay, they follow the same guidelines as paper records, okay? So you'll have to go ahead and you'll have to request disposal of those electronic records. So your medium type would change to electronic records. Here we're going to talk about paper for today. And then volume, how much in volume do I have to, that I'm trying to dispose of? Again, this is a requirement. I typically say it's really a guesstimation. If you take a standard record storage box, which is a 1 cubic foot box, well, how much of this agendas and minutes are filling up that box? Now, it could fill up the entire box. In that case, I would put just one. But since I have 4 years worth of these records, it might be filling up 3.5 boxes, right? So I can do 3. And then to the drop down to the right, I can say 0.50, right? So I picked 3.5 boxes. Again, try to do your best as you can to, get as accurate as possible. Again, I know it's a guesstimation, but, again, you have to report the volume. Unfortunately, that's a requirement that's been in place since the mid 50s when these requirements were first initiated. So again, just wanted to show that to you. At this point, I've entered all the information for the first line I enter in. Now, I mentioned earlier, one of the things you want to do as you work in disposition management is you constantly want to hit save after you're done entering each line. Reason being is, right, I know nobody's ever busy out there, never gets called away from their desk and so on and so forth. But as I mentioned earlier, if you're logged into the system and I was currently working and the system didn't detect any activity for a period of time, I think it's a couple hours, I think it's 2 hours, it's automatically going to log you off. And anything you have not saved up to that point will be lost. So again, it's a good idea to come in here and actually click on save as we're going through it. Now I want to add additional record series to this list, right? And there's 2 ways I can do that. If I just have one more record series number that I want to add, I can click on the button that says add new row. Okay, it's going to populate a blank row for me, and I can either enter in the 8-digit number like I did before, or another way you can actually pull up record series numbers is the question mark in this field. And if I click on that question mark, what will happen is we'll get a pop-up box that will give me all my record series numbers in numerical order along with the record series title and the retention period, right? And I can scroll down and I can say, okay, I'm going to pick, let's say this election file right here, right? I'm just going to click on the number, the record series number, and again, it will populate the number, the title, and the retention period, and then here I can go ahead and I can put my dates in, right? Let's do 6/2005. I'll use the same date range. I'm just going to say this is one box of those records. I'm going to click on save. I'm going to make sure I get a message up at the top of the green that says, request saved successfully. And then the last way to enter rows into the system is a button here that says add multiple rows. So if I have a bunch of record series numbers and I want to add them all at once, I just click on the add multiple rows box. Similar box that came up before. The only difference is to the left, there's a checkbox. And now what I can do is I can go down and I can enter a few items here, right? Just like this. Okay. Let's just do one more. All right. And then once I select all those items, I'll hit OK. And then what the system's going to do is the system's going to actually add all those lines to the list. And at this point in time, I can go in and I can put in my date range, right? And I'm going to kind of use the same date range here for everything as we move forward. So just give me a second here while I'm doing this real quick. Now, as I'm doing this, you're going to see a couple things that I did, and I did them on purpose. People are like, well, why did he do that? Well, one of them is I added a permanent record to this request, right? Now you would say, okay, we can't get rid of permanent records. Why would he add it to the request, right? Well, I did that for a couple reasons. One of them is when I go to process this disposition request and send it to the state, one of these items are going to be rejected, so you can kind of see what a rejection looks like. But a couple other things as well, too. Since I utilized all the same date ranges, let's take a look at line number 3, right, which says correspondence, hard copy, electronic, policy, non-statutory, non-regulatory, right, has a 25-year retention policy. And the date range that I used, which was July of 2001 to 06-2005, to the right in a column, I got a date there that says 06-2030, right? It's telling me technically I can't get rid of these records until June of 2030 based on the date range that I put in and what the retention period is. So people ask Mark, well, why do you let the system, allow you to go in and put that date range in and save that record? Well, the reason, as I mentioned earlier, with the special conditions, if I have a certified document imaging system and I've scanned these records into my system, I can request disposal before 2030 of those paper records, as long as that digital, that scanning system has been approved by the state, and I also send them a copy of my certification. I can request disposal of those paper documents. And the same thing with the one at the bottom too, which was a 30-year retention period. The same thing I did is 06-2036. Again, if I had that imaging system, that's fine. But let's say I didn't, okay? And let's say these were put in here by mistake. Well, how do I get rid of them? Well, very simply. On the right-hand side of the screen, there's an X. I can just click on that X. It's going to say, are you sure you want to delete this record? I'm going to click OK. And then what it's going to do is going to delete that line, right? And I'm going to do the same thing with the 25-year one too. I'm going to click on the X. Going to click on OK, and that's going to delete that one as well too. And at this point in time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Save to save my changes. And now what's happened is now my changes, those two lines that I deleted are now saved. So let's say at this point in time, I'm done adding my record series, right? So a couple things I want to show you real quick, right? I want to jump out of this screen. I want to go back to the home screen. And I want to just show you the inbox in the lower left-hand corner. And the first item says Disposition Request Work in Progress 1, right? As I mentioned earlier, as I start to work in the system, those numbers in parentheses, those zeros are now going to change to numbers. And when I first log into the system, this is a quick way for me to get back into that request by clicking on this link, right? It brings up a list of all the ones that are what we call a work in progress. And at this point in time, I can just click on edit and I can go back in and I can continue to work on this request. Now, a couple things is people have asked me, says, Mark, once I create a request, do I have to finish it immediately and do everything, that has to be done with it and submit it to the state? The answer is no. You can start a request. You can come back in later in the day. You can come back in tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, okay? So long as it's been saved, it's in the system, and you can always come back to that request and you can update and change anything you want on that request up until the point that you've submitted it to the state. Once you submit it to the state, you can't make any more changes to that request. But up until that point, you can make changes, right? So now, let's say I've added everything I wanted to this request, right? There's nothing else I want to add. I now want to print out this disposition request, and I want to get my signature so I can submit it. Well, to print this out, in the lower right-hand corner, you have a print button. I'm going to click on that print button. What's going to happen is we're going to see our form come up here in a second. Give it a second to open. Okay. There's my disposition form, all filled out and complete. Okay. Now, one other thing I want to point out to you as well, too, when you're adding your record series numbers to that screen. On the paper form that you're utilizing today or have been utilizing, I think it's either 6 or 8 boxes. I forget how many boxes you have or record series numbers that you can add to that form. Basically, in the Artemis system, you basically have unlimited lines you can add. Now, I say that loosely because I have seen requests that have been submitted to the state, believe it or not, with over 400 line items on it. People were doing a lot of cleanup, but I don't recommend that. And the reason why I don't recommend that is because if the state for some reason rejects or denies that request, guess what? All those lines are going to have to be resubmitted again. So what I tell people to do is, as you're doing your request or creating your request, keep the amount of lines you put on a request to within reason. I say typically no more than 25 lines should be on any one request. Again, you don't want to have a request rejected by the state, and then you have to go ahead and you have to enter everything back in, except for that maybe one line that was rejected, or again, I don't know why they rejected it. Maybe you forgot a signature, okay, and it got rejected because you forgot your signatures, and then you have to go back in and you have to, do it all over again. So keep it within reason. You know what I mean? So if you do get a rejection, it's a lot easier to go in and do that. But again, basically, the system doesn't have a limit on the amount of lines you can enter in, but I just say keep it in reason. So now at this point, right, I've now have on the screen my disposition request. I would now print this out on a printer, and now I would get my signature. So again, from the organization, I need at least 2 signatures. So me as the requester, I'm going to sign in box number 3. And then I'm going to give this to my approver or my custodian. In this case, it's John Smith, my BA or whatever, right? He or she's going to sign there. And then if this request requires any signature from the auditor, then I would send this document to the auditor, and the auditor would sign down in section 15, sign and date at the bottom. And then once I have all my signatures, okay, at that point in time, okay, I would scan this document and then upload it into the system. And that's what we're going to do now. And I know I have some questions coming in. I'm going to get to that as soon as I'm done submitting this to the state. So let's say I got a form. I got all my signatures. I've scanned that into my system. It's sitting on my computer or it's sitting out on my network drive. How do I get that into the Artemis system? Very simple. Same screen, left-hand side, there's a button that says Disposition Form Image. Okay, I'm going to click on that. Okay, this is going to open up our window that we can upload. In the upper left-hand corner, you're going to see a yellow folder icon. That's our upload icon. Just browse out to your computer where that form is. Double click on that form, okay? And make sure that form that you upload, again, it's not going to be exactly here the same, but you want to make sure that your request ID on the form matches your request ID up here. Again, if you submit the wrong form with the wrong request, it's going to get rejected. So make sure that the forms that you're uploading match the correct request you're on, especially if you're working on multiple requests at the same time. Once I upload that form into this screen, I'm going to click Save at the bottom. Okay, it's going to give me a certification statement here. Again, just legal garbage from the state. Just hit OK. And at that point in time, up at top in green, I said it got image saved successfully. Now I can close this box. And what you'll notice now on this screen is that my submit button is now enabled, and now I can submit this to the state. And all I need to do to submit this to the state is click on Submit. Again, I'm going to get some legal language that the state wants you to accept, and this is the information that's on the bottom of the form or on the top of the form, the legal language on the form. I'm going to click on OK, and now this request has been submitted to the state. Okay. Now, typically when they get it on their end, I know with the paper forms, it's probably taken a bit of a little while to get your authorizations back. You typically should have, as long as there's no problems with that form or that request, you should typically have a response back within a few days. Okay, just to give you an idea, when the state processes these requests, they can process 10 electronic requests quicker than they could process one paper request, okay? And actually they process the electronic request first and then go to the paper request. That's, kind of the reason why maybe your forms have been maybe a little bit delayed in getting back. But just wanted to tell you, again, when you submit this request within a few days, you should have a response back. So let me come in here real quick. I just want to do one more record or one more disposition request real quick here as we're going through this. Just want to kind of show you something. Okay, I'm going to save that. I'm going to upload my form, and then I'm going to submit this second one to the state as well too. And then while I'm doing this, once I submit this, I have to just jump on another system to approve these forms so you can kind of see what happens when they come back. And we're getting close to the end, so bear with me here a few more minutes, and then I'm going to answer some questions as I'm working on this. Okay, so let's close this. Let's submit this. And now this one has been submitted to the state as well. So let me go back out to the home screen. Now I submitted all my requests to the state. Now I just have to wait for them to approve them. And then once they approve them, what can happen, then I'll show you the next steps of what you do once they're approved within the system. So let me go through some of the questions real quick because I got quite a few. Let's see. Okay, so it says from Laura, it says the County Office of Education related question extremely important. Please include Pam on any correspondence, her email. Okay, Laura, just when you email me, just include Pam's information on that email so I know who to contact or CC her in. So when I reply all, everybody's getting the response on that. I have a question from Kathleen. It says, what if we have about 100 student records? Do we list them one at a time? No. If you have 100, if the record series number is for student records, okay, and you have 100 different student records, no, you only put the record series one time, okay, and you put the date range that those records apply to. Maybe it's 10 years worth of student records, maybe it's over 10 years that those student files apply to. So you would just put the date range for the 10 years in, And then for your volume, however much in volume that record takes up, you would choose that volume. But no, you do not have to list each student record as a separate line item, right? You just put one line item and you just say, we're requesting for student records to be disposed of. Jackie asked a question. It says, electronic records, what if we print them? Can we delete them without approval since hard copies are available? Yes, if you physically have a hard copy of that electronic record, then yes, I mean, if that's your official copy and that's what you're going to be disposing of, Jackie, yes, I believe so. But you have to be careful, right? Because I'll give you an example. You get an email, right? And there's correspondence in that email, but maybe there's an attachment and maybe you print out the attachment, okay? But the email is the actual correspondence, right? So you can't just go ahead and delete that email because that falls under correspondence. So just be careful. I always tell people that when you're doing a disposition request, a good way to just be on the safe side is that if you know those records could be possibly in electronic form as well, just put a second line item in for the same date range. Just choose the method, not the method, the medium type, and have one for paper and one for electronic. Then you have yourself covered. Okay, so I do that a lot with my municipalities because now since more and more stuff is electronic, I just tell them to just put two line items and just be on the safe side. So again, they have, they could show or prove that they had approval to delete those electronic records. Another question from Kathleen. The from and to dates would be different for most. Not really sure what you mean, Kathleen. If you can expand on that a little bit more when you say different for most, but not sure. Just expand on that if you can. Peggy asked, any plans for the state to update the outdated retention requirements? Peggy, that's something you would have to deal with the state. Now, I do know that the state does work in conjunction with people within, let's say, your organization. What I mean by that is within the Board of Ed. So like, for example, I work with a lot of municipalities, right? And I know within municipalities, certain retention schedules are worked in association with some of the state, associations, like the municipal clerks retention schedule is kind of worked with the state municipal clerks association. The tax board schedule or the tax assessor schedule is a lot of times worked in conjunction with the state tax board or tax assessor association. So again, typically, again, you maybe have to address that directly to the state, but it's usually one of the state associations that usually works with the state in kind of, working with the retention policies and coming up either with new policies, changing policies, edits, and so on and so forth. So I hope that answers your question, but again, that was really more of a question to the state. Julie asked, I thought the record series had to be the same or a new request had to be made. Not really sure what you mean by that, Julie. So again, if you can expand on that, I thought the record series had to be the same or a new request had to be made. Again, it might have been when I was talking, you were asking the question, but again, just ask the question again, maybe rephrase it or expand on it. That would be great. Diana asks, will there be a record for this program that shows what we have previously requested for disposition? Okay, so anything that you've requested in paper form up until this point, when you start using the Artemis system for electronic, will still be in paper form. Though that information is not in the Artemis system. But as soon as you start using the Artemis system, all your information will be retained in our Artemis system forever. Okay. So again, I hope that answers the question. I think that's what you were asking there, Diana. If not, again, just rephrase the question and just ask it again. Mindy asked, are digital signatures allowed? At this point in time, no. Okay, you still have to put wet signatures on the disposition request. However, we are working on a change to the system that will be available later this year or early part of next year to do this whole process 100% paperless with electronic signatures. You'll be able to electronically sign the forms directly in the system, so you won't have to print out those disposition forms and put wet signatures on. Like I said, at this time it's not available. You'll still have to process it utilizing a wet signature, but that is something that is down the road and will be either available for testing last quarter this year or first quarter in 2016. Patricia asks, how do I know if I need an auditor verification? Again, if we go back and we search retention policies and we pull up a record series number and we go to the details screen, if it says audit verification required and it's a yes, then it requires you to send that request to your auditor. Okay, so you have to look at your record series number, pull that up under retention policies and look at the question that says audit verification required. If that says yes, then you have to send that to the auditor. Marie asks, does this mean that you have to get permission from the state to destroy any records and we have to go through the BA to destroy any records? Yeah, any official records, Marie, okay, that's utilized in the course of your business, okay, or your organization, you can't destroy them. You have to get permission before you can destroy those records, okay? Like I said, there's 6 retention schedules for Board of Eds, okay? There's a lot of record series number. There's probably, I mean, I haven't counted them, but there could be upwards of 500 to 1,000 different record series number that pertains to all different types of records. And by all means, yes, before you can destroy a record, you have to get, authorization from the state before that record is destroyed. Jan asked, can the same person sign as the custodian and the submitter? No, you have to have 2 separate signatures. If the same person signs, it's going to get rejected. You have to have 2 separate people from your organization sign. So just, again, you should be able to find 2 people who can sign off on that. Danielle asks, what if the records in my office are copies of records that are kept in another office? Do we have to submit them this way or can we destroy them outside since they aren't originals? Very good question, Danielle. There are some record series that you'll see a record series number for original and you'll see a record series number for copies, okay? If you have 2 record series number and one says copies, then you have to request disposal of that record, okay? But if you have a record that doesn't have the word copies next to it, okay, then the person who's the original owner of that record or maintains that record is the only person that has to ask for approval or submit a disposition reform to request disposal of that record. But if that record has, sometimes you'll see some record series that say, let's say, for example, purchase orders, original purchase order copies, okay? If you have a copy, then yes, you have to submit a request to destroy those copies, okay? So I hope that answers your question. Again, I don't know any offhand, but I did see some, I think when I did that agendas and minutes, it did say copy, right? So if that was a copy of the agendas and minutes, then yes, then I have to submit a request for that. Kelly asks, what are the requirements and procedures for an agency to obtain certification for digital imaging? We are a county office of education. Kelly, I would say you need to contact that hotline number. They will tell you the process that you need to go through. If you go out to the RMS site, there is a section for imaging certification out there. It will list all the guidelines that your imaging certification, that your imaging system must follow in order to be certified. So again, you can either find that out at the state site or you can contact the hotline number and they will be able to tell you what the steps are to get certification. Julie asks, the record series number has to be the same or a new request has to be made for each starting series number. The record series number has to be the same or a new request has to be made for each starting series number. Still lost, Julie. Sorry. Maybe you can send me your contact information offline to my email once I give it, and we can kind of talk what you're trying to get to, but trying to still understand that. If it comes to me and hits me, I'll get back to you. Robin asks, is there a way to see all past requests that were done through Artemis? Yes, I will show you that in a couple of minutes. Just bear with me, Robin. We'll get to that. Diana asks, will we be able to review our previous approved requests? Yes, same thing. If I'm new here, what if I submit a duplicate request to the person whose job I'm taking over? If you submit a duplicate request for records that you've already got approval for, no big deal. They'll just approve it again as long as the dates are okay and everything. It's not going to hurt anything if you have a duplicate. So if you do have a duplicate request, no big deal. Does the system have the ability to issue reports? Records we submitted for disposal, yes, there are reports in the system. I don't really touch on it that much in this webinar just for time's sake, but you can go into our report section, Jackie, and you can try printing your reports or searching by dates and all that, but those are available in the system. Linda asks, what happens to an agency or district that destroyed records without permission? Well, that's an interesting question, Linda. Technically, you're liable. If somebody came in with an open request and said, I wanted to see this particular record, and you couldn't prove that you had authorization to destroy them, from a legal standpoint, there could be legal ramifications to that. So I would just, make sure that, if of records that have been destroyed already, again, I would contact the state and maybe have a discussion with them on that. But yeah, it does bring up legal ramifications if your organization has been destroying records without permission, especially if somebody comes in with an open request and you can't prove to them that you had permission. They can really, push the envelope and, seek, legal counsel on that. Danielle asked, do we need to get permission to destroy drafts of paperwork or just finalized documents? Daniel, I'm not sure. Again, that's a question I would push you to call the state on. I'm not an expert in every aspect of this, but I'm going to think that it's only the final documents, not the drafts. But I did see, as we saw earlier, when somebody asked a question about those notes from the from the meetings, that was the first time that I happened to see that record series. So again, I would do a search in the system and see if anything comes up for drafts. But again, I would recommend that you contact the state and get an official response from them. Kathleen asks, how long do you have to keep medical records on elementary students? Offhand, I don't know, Kathleen. You'd have to search the retention schedules and look for that particular policy. If you can't find anything there, again, I would have you call the state and get their official response on that. And then last question for now, and then we'll get back to questions a little bit later, from Robin. What do you do once you get permission to destroy? Do you need to print out the approval, or is it fine to just have it in Artemis? Give me a second, Robin. I'm going to go through that process in about 2 seconds. So let me finish this. And then give me 1 second, folks. The 2 requests that I submitted here, as I was answering the questions, I didn't get a chance to approve here. So let me do that so we can take a look back here in the system. Let me authorize this. Okay, authorize. Yeah, I just have to work in a different system to do the authorization, so I'm not jumping back and forth in the same system here. Let me do this one. That one's authorized. Yep. Okay. Okay, that one's done. And let me do the second one, and we'll be almost done here. Back. Yeah, like I said, as soon as you submit a request to the state, it automatically is in their queue immediately. So again, once you submit that, it's available to them immediately. I know several years ago when they were fully staffed at that time, before some of the cuts they had, what happened was, let me just make a comment here. 1 second. Authorized. Yeah, a couple of years ago when they were fully staffed, they actually were able to approve electronic requests sometimes same day. If you had submitted the request in the morning, a lot of times requests were approved by the afternoon, which was great because it was a quick turnaround time. But like I said, now it will be quicker than what you've probably been used to in the past, just because, like I said, they can process a total of 10 electronic requests to 1 paper request. And they do the electronic ones first. Okay, so now what I just did was I just approved those requests. I'm going to refresh my screen here, and we're almost done. So this is the last piece, and then I'll get you guys out of here. As the screen refreshes, we're going to look at my dashboard or my inbox in the lower left-hand corner, and under Approve Request, what I should see at that point in time, I should see a number 2 in the parentheses to let me know that I have 2 authorized requests. And what I could do is I can click on that link, okay? And what that'll do is that'll display both requests, right? And I'll go into the first one. I'm going to click on View. Now, the one thing that I recommend that you do is you go into each request, okay? Even though it says authorized, just double check each line that you submitted and each line was authorized, right? So in this case, the status here on the right-hand side says authorized. And at this point in time, okay, now that I know this line item's authorized, I could go ahead and I can dispose of these student accident reports. So at this point in time, I know student accident reports have been authorized. I'm now going to go to my destruction method, whatever it is, whether I shred it, recycle, incinerate, what have you. I'm going to dispose of these records. And then once I dispose of these records, or these records have been disposed of, there's one last step that you need to do. But before I do that, I just want to show you the other request real quick because I did reject one of the line items on that request. If you remember on the one request, what happened was I submitted a request with 4 line items on. One of them happened to be a permanent record. I rejected that record. So this is why it's important to go in, even though this request was authorized, this is what they consider a conditional request. There were some records that were actually rejected on here. But once I go in here and I look, I see that the last record was rejected. I don't want to dispose of that. I could dispose of the first 3, but I don't want to dispose of the last record because it was rejected. So that's why you always want to go into your request, especially if it's multiple lines, and double check to make sure each line was authorized. At this point in time, if I want to print out the authorized disposition form, I can click on the disposition form image button. What that'll do is that'll open up not only my original disposition form that I submitted with my signatures, but we also have a summary sheet here that basically lists each line item and record series number, the date range, and if it was authorized or rejected. So again, that's available there too. But once you've authorized your records, or you have your records authorized, and now let's say I've gone ahead and I've disposed of these first 3 line items, the agendas and minute copy, the election file, and the legal notices. I've now gone out, I've hired a shredding company, they've come in, they shredded my documents. There's one last step I need to do, or you need to do, to finalize this request. Now, if people are familiar with the 4-part form, okay, let me just see if I can pull that up here real quick. In the lower right-hand corner of that form in section 17, okay, what you would have done after you've destroyed the records is you would have filled this out saying that you've disposed of those records and the date that you disposed of them, and then you would take that final copy of that 4-part form and you would send it back to the state to let them know these records have been destroyed. Technically, until you send that last page back to the state or notify them that the records have been disposed of, the state thinks you still have the records. It's still not official that the records have been disposed of, right? That's the final step in the process. So if you haven't been sending that last page back and filling out that information in section 17 that says the date you disposed of them and how you disposed of them and signing off that you disposed of them, I would do that, right? Because technically the state still thinks you have those records. But here in the Artemis system, we actually do that electronically. And we do that by clicking on this button here that says Update Disposition Status. When I click on that button, the system will ask me for my PIN number. That's what we chose in the very beginning. This is where that PIN number comes into place. And once I click on Authenticate, I'm going to get a pop-up box here, right? And it's going to say to me, it's going to have my username. It's going to have the date that I disposed of the records. Obviously, it's going to default to today's date, but let's say I disposed of them yesterday. Well, then I would change this to yesterday's date. It's going to ask me what my destruction method is. Okay, shred is the most common one, so that's kind of the default. But again, you can choose other types of destruction methods. Okay, like I'll give you an example. Down in Camden County, okay, they have an incinerator, a county incinerator, and the incinerator allows towns and municipalities and county agencies to bring records over there and incinerate them. And then once they're incinerated, the county actually issues a certificate saying that the records were incinerated. That would fall under other, and I would probably put in there incinerate. But since most people shred, obviously we can leave that as shred, okay? And then typically what I would do here under comments is I would usually put the name of the company that did the shredding and issued your shredding certificate. So I know there's a company out there called Shred It, okay? Is the company that, all right, I'm just gonna put a quick note in here, okay? And then once I complete this information here and I hit save, now this information will go back to the state and update this record, okay? And now everything is complete about this request. It's now what we call a final, it's in its final status, okay, disposition status. But until you do that piece, okay, until you complete that disposition status, or on the 4-part form, you fill out the bottom right-hand section 17 and submit that copy, that final copy back to the state, that's when it's complete at that point in time. Okay, so again, we're done. I've completed that request. I can go back out to my search results, right? I should only have one item left in the list. Hold on one second. I'm going to click on view, right? I'm going to open up this record. I'm going to update that disposition status as well too. Right, and I'm going to say this was shredded. I'm going to hit save. And now I've completed this request as well too. Okay, so that completes my request. That completes the whole disposition processing. Final thing before I answer final questions and let everybody go for the day is somebody asked a question earlier. How can I search in the system? Well, under disposition management, there's a link here that says search disposition request. We have search parameters at the top of the screen, so you can search all different types of parameters. I can search for records by a particular schedule or agency. I can search by a particular status. So if you wanted to go back and search all requests that have been completed, okay, I just go down to the bottom and say dispositions completed, and then I hit my search key, and then all requests that have been completed will come up on my list, and then I can click on the view button. I can go in and I can view those particular requests and those line items. If I need to print out a copy of my disposition form to provide proof to somebody that I had authorization to destroy those records from the state, here's your disposition form with the state signature on it. Plus at the bottom of that form, we also annotate the authorization number and the authorization date, and also the date that you disposed of the records and the destruction, the method of destruction for those records all get annotated at the bottom of the form. So if you have to print this out and submit this to the person as proof, by all means, you can go ahead and do that. But under that retention schedule, search retention schedule, you could go ahead and you can search, different statuses for your, disposition request, right? There's a whole bunch of different statuses here. And you can also do it by date range, like your submit date range. Like if I wanted to see everything that was submitted for one particular year, I can put that date range. If I want to see everything that was authorized or rejected for a period of time, I can do that, or even stuff that was requested for a period of time. That can all be done by filling out these search parameters up at the top of the screen. So that's what I have for today, everybody. I do have some final questions here that I'm going to answer, and then I will stay on a few minutes afterwards in case anybody has any final thoughts or questions. Again, if you do jump off the webinar now, I want to thank everybody for joining today's webinar. Again, I will be posting this on YouTube for you to review if you need to, and I will be posting my email address in a few seconds. So in case anybody needs to get in touch with me, and have any questions, feel free to contact me. So let me go through the last couple of questions here real quick. Another question from Jackie says, could the question on the record series refer to documents like record series, which also fall under that and that? Can we submit the general record series? Jackie, I'll get back to you on that, or let's talk offline on that, because I don't want to do all the searching and try to figure out which is which here on this call, but yeah, we can do that. Robin asks, can we shred in-house? Absolutely. Okay, so if you shred it, again, the destruction method just says shred. It doesn't have to be done by an outside agency. If you want to do it internally, that's fine too. Just FYI, a lot of people put stuff into recycling. If there's no confidential information on those documents, people will just put it into recycling. So again, it's up to you how you want to dispose of it, but you just have to make sure that you complete that one less section, complete disposition status, and let the system know how you destroyed that record. Danielle asked, do you have to use an outside company to shred documents, or can you use the office shredders? Again, no, you could use your office shredders to do it. Maybe in comments, you might just want to put that, documents shredded internally or something like that, just so you have a comment of that. Jackie says, we usually recycle and only shred documents that have student personal identifying information. The recycling company usually picks up recycling on a weekly basis and does not provide certificates. Should we be obtaining certificates? No, you don't have to. Especially if you're putting into recycling, if you already know what documents don't contain confidential information, by all means, you could put it in recycling. Again, I would just put it in comments that, this was given. If you have a company that picks up your recycling, I would just say, this is the company that, it was recycled with, just so you have it as reference, Jackie, within your, within that, information. But no, you don't have to, do that. So let me give you my email address real quick. I'm going to put that into the chat section right here for everybody. And I think my email address was also on the emails that you were receiving as well too. But in case you missed that, deleted them, or whatever, I will give you my email address again. Okay, and like I said, for the people who I said to contact me offline, just send me an email with your contact information, and if it's a question that I need to speak to you directly, then I can give you a call and we can discuss further. And then if I need to get, somebody from the state, RMS involved or email them, then that's what we'll do to get your questions answered. Again, I want to just thank everybody for attending today's webinar. I hope you're all excited, and I hope that you find, the system will benefit you and work a lot easier than what you're used to with the 4-part form. I will tell you that the municipalities and the county agencies that I've been working with the last 7 years absolutely love it, just because they can get their requests done a lot quicker. Less paper for them, even though I know you have to print out the disposition form and still upload and scan that. Eventually that's going to go away. But it is, a little bit less paper intensive, and we hope that the system makes your life a little bit easier, especially being able to do some of the functions I showed you today. So I'm going to stay on another minute or two. So if anybody has any last questions, feel free to, enter them in the question section, and we'll go from there. So thanks everybody, and have a great day.